Well, first of all, it's nice to meet you again. We met several years ago at Comic-Con before the world shut down. But it's nice to meet you. I've been a huge fan of you since I was 16, 17. Like I follow your work as a journalist, and you had a huge impact on me as a reporter. So just like, this is why like this is so bizarre in all the best way possible, because like I read your work and now watching your work.
Lower your expectations.
No. But listen, like I was re-binging the 6 episodes yesterday, and again, I'm like, okay, I'm in. And now I'm just waiting, like, CW, you're in episode 7. Where's episode 7? I want to see what's happening next. But let me take me back to how this all came about with Gotham Knights, because this was happening during when you guys were writing Batwoman season 2 or 3, right?
Yeah, so back in Batwoman season two, much like everybody else in the world, with the pandemic hitting, I was like, oh my gosh, is the world ending? And I was trying to find ways to sort of distract myself, and put that into a creative outlet. And so I remember writing a post-it note that said Gotham Knights, and sticking it on my computer and staring at it every day. When I was in the in the Zoom room for Batwoman season two, but couldn't quite crack it. And I think a lot of that was just I was dealing sort of in the with the grief of having lost my father to a 15-year battle with cancer, and
Condolences.
just thank you. And just sort of thinking about, like, how do I live up to him? Like, how do I live up to his legacy? He was such a great man, and so, that's where my brain started thinking. And so, of course, that was the sort of genesis for Gotham Knights, was this idea of legacy and this idea of losing a parent, and then trying to figure out, am I going to follow in their footsteps, or if I'm going to forge my own path, and forge my own legacy, essentially. And so that's where Gotham Knights was born. And I thankfully have a great mentor in Greg Berlanti, and I pitched the idea to him during one of our catch ups, and he's like, "This sounds like a TV show." But I had been a TV writer for just a few years, and so he was like, "You should bring in someone who's been through development before." And I was working with Chad and James on Batwoman, and they had been such great mentors throughout. By this point, we were in the third season of Batwoman, because it took me that long to sort of figure out cracking the show, and so brought in Chad and James, and then we just hit the ground running, and created Gotham Knights together.
Well, now that, yeah, I heard about your father, and now I'm almost guessing Turner is someone very personal for you, because now, like, I see the parallels that you get to, because he's not, he's going through what you had to go through. Is that a right assumption to say?
Yeah, but it's interesting because I was telling our actors as we went to start shooting the pilot last year in Toronto. I was like, I feel like there's a piece of me in every character, not just Turner. Yes, he's dealing with loss, and wondering if he can live up to Bruce Wayne's legacy. But there is just like a little bit of my own experiences, or our writers, or Chad and James's sorry, experiences in each of these characters. Some, it would be a spoiler to share. um, but it's nice to get to find an outlet to sort of channel what you're going through, just because it makes stories that much more realistic. And our Batwoman showrunner Caroline Dries, who ended up coming over onto Gotham Knights, she said something to me that really resonated, which is, it's a privilege to turn pain into art. And I
Well,
find that to be,
that's a good quote. That's a good quote for life.
yeah. Yes, yes. So I find that to be really true. But yeah, the best stories I think on TV are ones that are most realistic and relatable. And so I feel like everyone, both in our cast, in our crew, in our writers' room, like everybody brought their own heart to the show in different ways.
Well, when you were talking about filming Gotham Knights in Toronto, because I know you guys, the pilot was in Toronto, but then you guys moved to Atlanta. What was the creative reason behind it? Because I love the visual of this Gotham City, like because I know we've seen Gotham in a lot of different mediums now, but like this doesn't feel like I'm walking through Vancouver like on the other DC shows. Like, oh, they've used that tree before. They used that. And this feels completely new and fresh, but also a little familiar in a lot of good ways. What was the creative reason behind that?
Yeah, I think, with Gotham Knights in general, we really wanted to do something new and not just creatively, being separate from the Arrowverse, but also visually, because as somebody who's filmed up in Vancouver, who also went to a ton of set visits up in Vancouver back when I was a reporter, some of these locations are pretty recognizable, and it look to I get it. Like Vancouver is a great place to film. I really love it, but we were just trying to make something that was distinct and different. And so Toronto really lent itself to capturing that for the pilot. And then it just made sense to move down to Atlanta, and it was a whole new sort of grittiness down in Atlanta that we could find or we could elevate to create our own Gotham.
No, I agree because like something like when we go to Gotham Academy or their Watchtower, like it just feels again, it feels new. Again, like we all as comic book fans, we know some of these occasions we kind of we got to see them on pages. But again, I love the fact that it feels new, it feels special. So I'm again, I agree. Vancouver is wonderful, but it's great that you guys are now in a location where like one not as many set photos can be shared, which I actually like. There were good surprises because listen, all respect to Vancouver, but like there's a lot of openness there. But with Gotham Knight, I feel like when I watched the first 6 episodes, I'm like, oh, I get to be surprised. Like nothing, like I haven't seen this before, and it's great.
I think part of that too is getting to film the whole first season in a bubble. So while there were people who clearly were trying to seek us out, especially in Toronto, I remember shooting outdoors somewhere downtown. We had this crazy windstorm that night, but there were so many fans around. And they were all trying to, see Misha Collins, who was filming with us that day. But it was just one of those moments where you're like, "Oh wow!" Like there are a ton of people here, but I think it's because they accidentally ran into us. Whereas in other instances, people are like seeking your show out. And because we filmed the whole first season in a bubble, we kind of got this anonymous feel of like we get to just do us, and then everybody gets to see it and be surprised by it. So it was kind of nice.
I was talking. Yeah, speaking of Misha, I was talking to him yesterday, and he talked about how episode 10, I believe, was something he was really looking forward for fans to see. So, if we were to look at all these characters, could you maybe tease, respectively, what's a big episode for them coming up? Like, what's a big episode for Turner? What's a big episode for Stephanie, and so on?
It's really curious because I think you say episode 10, but I'm pretty sure he probably meant episode 11 for him in particular.
Okay.
But I will say, you know, what's great about Gotham Knights is that it's an ensemble show, and
Yeah.
so everybody is going to get a chance to shine and a chance to really, delve into backstory and what makes each of these characters tick. For Turner, obviously, we're coming in, through his POV and seeing how he deals with loss, and deals with not knowing that his dad was Batman and wondering just how close were they really? Were there other secrets that he was keeping? And so I would say, some of Turner's bigger episodes, start to come out in episode 5, episode 9, 10, uh, as for Duella, this is a character who, her whole life she's been told, you're the daughter of the Joker, you're a bad kid. And so Duella thought, well, if everybody thinks I'm a bad kid, I'm just going to be the best bad kid possible. And so to see Duella's journey from thinking, I have to be one thing, then being forced into a situation where she's kind of doing heroic things, something she would never want to do. Um, and seeing, does she lean into that? Does she reject that? Um, uh, that's going to be a really fun journey for her. Gosh, there's a ton of great episodes for Duella, but I would say, episode 9 is a fun one for her. Uh, episode 2 is a really great one for her. 11. Yeah. So Carrie Kelly is she was Batman's sidekick. So she's coming in with a bit more experience. And while she's the youngest of our Gotham Knights, she is probably the most experienced,
Oh yes.
which causes such an interesting dynamic within the group. And I think, big episodes for her include episode 3, episode 5, episode 9. Um, all the way through 12, 13, all of that. But it's really interesting to see somebody who is trying to balance having an alter ego, having to be a student but also be a hero and try to pick up that mantle when she thinks, well, Batman's gone, who else is going to do it? And so a lot of that starts to weigh on somebody, especially when they're 15 years old. So we'll see what it's like for a sort of Gen Z superhero to find her way in this world. Harper and Cullen Rowe, I love these characters so much. Uh, Both, raised under, their mom took off when they were younger, and their dad sort of, much like the comics, abusive, homophobic, alcoholic. And so someone like Harper has kind of put up walls and weaponized her anger to protect her heart. And someone like Cullen, who, it's really interesting when we were developing the show. I have two different sets of twins in my life that one person in the set transitioned. And so I always thought it was really fascinating to you're supposed to be looking in a mirror basically, but you're not seeing yourself. And
Mm.
so that's what was sort of behind the drive to tweak Cullen's character from the comics, who in the comics is bisexual younger brother of Harper, and in this playing them as twins who are, have always just relied on each other, and have not been able to rely on others. So what does that look like when they're forced into a situation where they can't just rely on each other? And so you'll see how that starts to divide or strengthen the twins as we go along. And so some of those big episodes include episode 3, episode 5, episode 11, for Stephanie Brown. This is someone who you will see in the pilot is not among our fugitives, and so she is a loyal best friend to Turner, and so her sort of goal is to help our fugitives clear their names. Now, Stephanie is someone who, much like in the comics, she appears to have sort of the perfect life: celebrity game show host father, doting stay-at-home mother, But I think you will start to see that there are cracks in this sort of facade that her family puts on, which is a really great um, and relatable journey to watch Stephanie go on. And some of those bigger episodes, I think episode 6, episode 11, there are more.
Okay.
But yes. And then of course Harvey Dent, Andy, you got to see the first 6 episodes. We really wanted press to see the first 6 because I think the first 3 are not necessarily indicative of what the show is as a whole, because it's not just our knights trying to clear their names and Harvey Dent chasing them down. No, these they're, particularly this emotional journey for Harvey is one that we took sort of great care with, because rightfully so, there's a lot of people who uh, never appreciated in the comics that Harvey became Two-Face just because he was disfigured. And because that's really damaging to the disabled community, differently abled community. Not sure the correct wording on that. But and so we really wanted to show like the sort of definitive origin story for Harvey Dent, and show that there is something sort of lurking beneath the surface for Harvey that he is unaware of, that he will come to sort of discover as the audience is discovering. And so that kind of kicks off pretty early on, but I want to say episode 6 is a
Yes,
cool,
definitely. Yes,
cool,
definitely.
quite a big one for him, and 11 as well. But no, it's going to be quite a ride for people, because I feel like, you know, whenever we've seen Two-Face in live action, you know, they have to tell his story just so quickly to
Yeah.
get straight to the, hey, his damaged psyche and his damaged face. So we don't get to spend a ton of time with him. But with Gotham Knights, we're getting to really see who he is as a person, and how, somebody who starts the season very morally black and white, how choices start to blur those lines and blur those boundaries.
Well, I definitely want to get a little into the Court of Owls, and this, for this part will definitely run after episode is aired. Um, y'all did not hold back. I mean, they are ruthless in these episodes, and I'm really excited they get to be part of the story. How, like, was there a lot of trying to convince DC, hey, because I know DC can be very very protective of who which characters they use and so on. So how do you guys get the core about it? How do they play into this first season?
Yeah, so this was kind of an exciting moment. When we were early in development, we were looking for a Court of Owls type organization that could be pulling the strings. And I remember we were at Chad's house, me, Chad, and James. Most of our writing and development process was like going from each other's houses and that sort of thing during the pandemic. And so we were at Chad's house one day, and Chad sent an email over to DC being like, "Hey, we're looking for like a Court of Owls like organization." And DC very quickly wrote us back, and they were like, "What if we could give you the Court of Owls?" And I
Oh
just
wow.
remember like the loudest scream of excitement coming from all 3 of us, and sort of like all of us high-fiving, being like, "Oh my God, we get to do the Court of Owls." Because the Court of Owls, as like a diehard comic book fan, you know, there's so much history that we've known of Gotham throughout, the first 60, 70 years or so. And then when the Court of Owls run came out, it was like everything you thought you knew was upended. And they did it in a way that didn't feel like this huge retcon. It felt like Oh, I just didn't know. I just didn't know who was pulling the strings, and that feels so realistic to, our world, in real life that, like, what kind of control do we really have over our lives, you know? And so, uh, and so it was, just an absolute, um, delight to get to bring the Court of Owls, to life on the show, and really get to, like, tap into I'm such a nerd for Easter eggs and for, finding inspiration from the comics, and so to really get to tap into, that Court of Owls run, to the point where um, you will see panels pulled almost directly from the comics on screen, in ways that are like, "Ooh, chef's kiss," like, just so, incredible. It just feels like, an honor to, like, get to play in this sandbox with these, villains who have had, such an impact, on the Batman mythos.
I'm really hope because when Duella starts quoting like the verse about the horror, I'm like, I'm begging to God that Scott Snyder watches this because I mean his words are coming to life, his creations are coming to life. So I'm hoping, um, I really hope we get to see that. I have to, I know you probably can't say too much, but because we get, as we get through the season, these heroes they start to grow. But if they're going to be out on these streets, they're going to need to wear something, cover up and so on. I mean, tease me some things. Tease me some. Can you tease anything about costumes, suits, masks?
Uh Yeah, this is like this is the challenge of every superhero show I'm now seeing, being on the other side of things.
Yeah.
And so, you will start to see elements of that. But I would say, uh, you know, first and foremost, Robin is coming into this as more of an established vigilante, whereas everybody else is growing into their roles. And so I think you should look at the first season as a sort of build up to reaching
Like
a
year
certain
one.
place. Yeah, and so I think, many people will be very excited as we get towards the end of the season to see some recognizable elements of clothing, weapons, something to that effect. But again, this is a Gotham Knights origin story, so we're going to, be taking our time.
Yeah, I still love the little, you talk about Easter eggs with Care Keller, for example. I love that the green goggles are still in there, a little more modernized, but like they're still in there. So I love that. I when I spoke to Mika yesterday, he talked about that this first season does very much end on a with a nice bow and everything. Um, would you say there are things that you guys are setting up in the finale for a potential season two?
Absolutely. Yeah, they're I wouldn't say it ramps up in a bow. I would say that we close, one chapter
Hmm.
of, what I hope is a long book for Gotham Knights. But yeah, we definitely have a number of cliffhangers in the finale that, should we be so lucky, I hope that we get to, delve into, in season 2, particularly as it pertains to, a certain, two-faced politician.
Yeah, no, I told him yesterday that I feel Harvey is a perfect villain for character for serialized television because you're right. 2 hours it goes by really quick. You can't get a lot of ground with it because Harvey is also he's a more complex character out of all that of it as villains. So how much fun did you and all the writers have into diving into all that and see, hey, he isn't born evil. He is someone that he's created through results of different circumstances in his life.
Yeah, and I think that's true for every character, not just Harvey Dent,
Mm.
because you think about, like, how he was raised, with his own dad had a fair set of issues, which we'll be exploring, in the season, and so you think about how he came up, and that idea of nature versus nurture, and so somebody like Harvey Dent who faced, such an unstable childhood, then did everything he could to be a morally stringent person, somebody who sees things in black and white, who very much knows the line between right and wrong as we first meet him. Now compare that to a character on the opposite side of the spectrum, like Duella, who again her whole life she's been told she's a bad kid. That's of course she's going to live up to that name and try to be that person and try to be the best bad kid there is, and live up to her father's legacy. And so, you're going to see characters like that then have their mindsets tested, have their core values questioned and tested throughout the season in ways that I hope will be surprising. But as far as like getting to play in that sandbox of like who Harvey Dent is as a person, it's most fun. There's a scene that you've seen, Andy, that people won't see for a while. But that video camera, here's what I'll say about a little tease for that. There are moments throughout the writing process and development process, and I can't go deeper into that one in particular, but I will give you another example, that words just come tumbling out of your mouth that you go, oh, that's weird, like, and then they come to life on screen exactly how you said it. And so how how I'll describe this the best way was, when we were writing the pilot and we were getting into the jail cell scene, where Duella, Harper and Cullen are sort of faced with Turner for the first time. And here I am thinking I'm so similar to a character like Stephanie Brown, who I was really drawn to in the comics. And then the day we start writing the dialogue for Duella, her dialogue just spilled out of my mouth, being like, "Oh, but it's nice having all that money to from Daddy to well, murder Daddy," which I think is a line now that's been cut. But like the lines just came out of my mouth, and I go, "Oh no, am I more like Duella?" and, and it was a stark moment where I was like, "Uh-oh," and I felt like that moment that fans will get to see, soon enough with Harvey is that came spilling out of my mouth in the writers' room, and it's just one of those nice moments where you go, and it came to life exactly like that on screen, and I go, "Oh no, am I like Harvey?"
Oh, that's funny. I no, I mean, again, you're right. I mean, you can put something of yourself into any character without being specifically one. I know I have to let you go soon, so um, as we go through these episodes, um, can you tease any more? Like, because I know we have a lot of DC characters showing up. And you guys just announced Joe Chill. That episode is I I never thought I would say that in my life that Joe Chill shook me. But what else from the lore can we look forward to? Because we're still establishing this Gotham in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, first, Doug Bradley, just he's incredible, coming in as Joe Chill, and to get to um, you know, delve into the mythos behind the death of Batman's parents in a way that even the Court of Owls run only sort of scratched the surface at. It was really, really exciting. As far as other characters, I think you're going to hear some characters be name dropped early on in the season that we will then get to pay off later. So I'll hint that. And there are a few characters that have not been announced yet. One in particular that really really excites me. And I think that speaks to being fortunate enough to shoot again in Atlanta, so was not spoiled. But I will say that there's someone coming on who it gives me hope that the possibilities are endless for what could be next with Gotham Knights.
I like that. Well, Natalie, thank you so much. This has been so much fun again. As someone who's, follows since I was basically a teenager, and now I get to do this because you now you're on the other side, because you were the one who would always ask showrunners and actors like, hey, what's going on, and so on. So not, it's been an honor and a pleasure. Hopefully, we can talk again in later this season. And congrats, what has been a first amazing, fun 6 episodes. I can't. Again, I'm like TW, we're seven. I'm ready for seven. But thank you so much for your time today.
No, thank you, Andy. Like, I always appreciate your passion, and you've been so kind to me over the years, both as a reporter and then coming over to the other side of this. And as you say, I've done this a lot with showrunners, but now being on the other side of things, I'm like, did I say anything useful?
Yeah, yes, you did. Yes, you
Good,
did.
good, wonderful. Well, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it.